What? Why are they closing 300 schools a year?
Less children.
They're shrinking, they're imploding. They're shrinking because by 2070, there's only 50 million people in Japan. It's half what they have. So you've got other kind of challenge in Japan. So that's one problem. On the other side, the 4 billion people who are accounting for just 16%, that end of the market is going at strong double digits. That end of the market, this business model will not work. Because even if you have patents, people can't afford. So how do you deal with that? So that's the other challenge. The third challenge is that most of their pipelines are focused on diseases of the West. So today there are about 950 drugs under development for cancer. It's not that cancer is not an epidemic in this part of the world, but cancer medication gets the kind of pricing power only in the West. So that's why this is the holy grail. You've got 250 odd drugs targeting cardiovascular disease. That's appropriate to India and China. 88 in HIV/AIDS and 416. This is what is relevant to the developing world. And there's some for diabetes as well. So these are really the 4 disease areas where the bulk of the investments are going today. And the challenge before the industry is that the expectation of peak sales from these drugs is nowhere close to $1 billion. Costs are what they are. The traditional markets are not there. And therefore, what kind of a business model do you develop to sustain this industry? So, what does it take to bring a drug to market? Really, you have the preclinical stage, which is when you look at a whole library of compounds. You look at the entire chemical pathway of the disease, and then you identify a particular chemical entity which seems to have some impact on some part of that disease pathway. So that whole area is called preclinical, which is lead optimization, the process which I just told you. Then having identified that, you need to make sure that you synthesize that molecule and you can produce it on a commercial scale. You make sure that you reduce the elements of that molecule which are toxic in nature. So that is the whole area of chemical development. And then you have a potential drug. So that's the whole area called clinical development. Having got that, you then need to put it through testing on humans. Three stages to it: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Now this is the most expensive part of R&D. So I think, and I've got a slide on this, $1.38 billion is what it costs to bring a drug to market today. And the cost keeps rising every day. About 40% of that is from these 3 stages, which is phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And then there's the registration, then you manufacture. What matters here? How quickly you can find patients who are treatment naive, which means that who have not undergone treatment of any kind, the cost of investigators, paramedics, and then you've got the whole managing data, biostatistics, reports, all of that, which is now filed with the local jurisdiction, regulatory jurisdiction, whatever that is. And then, of course, you get into commercial manufacturing scale. So, what are some of the things which the industry is doing? The first thing they said is that can we find a way of bringing costs down here? Because if your peak sales expectations are going to be lower than what you had in the past, then you must find a cheaper way of producing those drugs. So this is the area which they try to outsource to the developing world, where the costs are much cheaper. And which is why this whole clinical trial phase became a big deal in India. Now, of course, it got into a bit of a challenge because of over-regulation. But I'm sure maybe it will resolve itself as we go along. So this is what they've done. And then they also tried and outsourced parts of this. So we had, before Ranbaxy was acquired by Daiichi, we had a collaboration with Ranbaxy where we used to give them a library of compounds. And this is not really intelligent work. It's a very laborious job. So, or the grunge work. So this is the part which Ranbaxy used to do and come up with potential leads. So that's the other part which they have they try to outsource and therefore bring down the cost to bring the drug to market. On the other hand, if you have generics, Brooks copies, which you have in India, they don't incur any of this cost. The cost of bringing a drug to market is far, far lower. And keep that thought, because when we come to India, you can see what's the challenge which innovative company faces. So as I said, even though the cost of they're trying to rein in the cost of R&D, even today, $135 billion is being spent every year on R&D. Typically, for an innovative company, anywhere between 12 to 16% of sales is what is spent on R&D. And the other problem that they're facing is that because the number of medicines, and you need to find medicines which provide a significant advantage over existing standards of care, which is to say that there must be a significant benefit over what is available in the market today. Otherwise, why would somebody prescribe the drug? And therefore, the funnel is getting narrower. And you can see that in 2011, out of 3,500 drugs in development, only 35 came to the market. And in the 4-year period, there's a significant drop in the number of chemical entities which have come out, or the new drugs, not just chemical entities. So here is the second challenge. Cost of bringing drug to market is going up. You're putting more and more money from one end of the funnel, and fewer drugs are coming out from the other end of the funnel, which makes the whole profit model of the industry very, very questionable. The fourth change in the industry is that so far most drugs were chemical entities. But since 2001, 30%, and increasingly the percentage keeps increasing, of the new drugs which are coming to market are biologics. Do you know what are biologics? Biologics are drugs which mimic the body's action. So, for example, people who have kidney failure, their kidney shut down, and then there is a protein which is called erythropoietin, which is produced by the body. That erythropoietin is responsible for triggering manufacture of red blood cells. If the body does not produce erythropoietin, then the body will not produce red blood cells and you develop anemia. So how do you create that? So what they do is they try and synthesize that outside of the human body. So and here they create banks of Chinese hamster ovary cells from which they extract this erythropoietin, purify it, and that then is then administered to patients with kidney failure so that they don't get anemia. So those are biologics which are really mimicking human systems or mimicking human products. 30% and more are increasingly biologics. Now, the problem with biologics is that like the next killer app, the ability to produce biologics does not depend upon how much money you have. It depends on what's the level of your intellectual capital. So like they used to say, like Bill Gates used to say that he's more worried about somebody developing the next killer app in a garage. The same is the challenge for biologics, because big pharma doesn't work here. It's more intellectual capital. So a small biotech startup can come up with a. So that's the other challenge, that it's no longer a game of having more and more funding. So that's the other challenge which the global pharma business model is facing. And then finally, because of that, in 2011, only 1 out of the 4 blockbuster products came out of big pharma. The rest came out of all startups and that sort of thing, because they were biologics. So some of the challenges which big pharma today has to deal with is that, as I told you, growth is not coming from the traditional geographies. It's coming from emerging markets. Pipelines are focused more on developed world diseases. Challenges from small biotech. And in emerging markets, you have challenges where the patent law in many countries like India doesn't necessarily work. And I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. Doesn't necessarily work the way it works in Europe or the US. And these companies don't know how to deal with it. Pricing challenges. You read it in the papers every day. Cancer drug costing 2 lakhs, cancer drug costing. Now the challenge in markets like India is that no matter what price you introduce a drug at, there will always be people who can't afford it. So I said that there is this complex problem which is multi-stakeholder, but it gets laid at the pharmaceutical industry's doorstep. And this is the challenge that they're facing here. Now, so how are they dealing with this? I don't think anybody has the answers yet. So if you look at Pfizer, the other problem is 2012 to 2016, $80 billion worth of drugs are going off patent in the US. And when a drug goes off patent, as I told you earlier today, the price drops to 100, and the innovator companies are no interest. So you have a big hole in your portfolio. Unlike traditional businesses or consumer businesses, once you have a brand, it becomes like an annuity. In the case of pharma industry, the moment the drug goes off patent, it's a huge hole. So, for example, the biggest drug in the industry until recently was Pfizer's Lipitor, atorvastatin. It is a $12 billion molecule, just one drug. And that went off patent in 2012. So you can imagine what it did to Pfizer. In one blow, you got $12 billion off your top line. And as a CEO, how did you deal with that? So what did Pfizer do? What do you think? Anybody? How did they do? Yes? They don't have. Nobody today, none of the innovator companies today have in their pipeline enough vaccines as of yet, as of now, to replace their existing products. So what did they do? Yeah, exactly right. So one of the things they did was they went and acquired Bayer. So consolidation. You pull out the cost and hope that the other guy has a pipeline, which in this case I'm not so sure. And then Pfizer has sort of broken the stock, it's not happened as yet. The stock that Pfizer will break up into 4 businesses. So established products, which are more generics, selling in emerging markets. Innovative products is one business. OTC is the 3rd business, and say R&D is the 4th business. So that's one model. So people are struggling with this. There are no answers yet. What has GSK done? GSK has tried to diversify its bets. So they say we will not depend only on white pills Western market. So they've tried, and this is possible for GSK because it's a British company. They went to emerging markets well before American companies did, and they have a footprint in important countries like India. This will be for many years. So they said we will bet on emerging markets, and that's what Andrew did when he took over in 2008. Sir Andrew was the CEO. And in the 4-year period, they shed headcount in the US, and equal number of headcount they added to emerging markets. There are some other metrics which tell you that the world is changing. So, 2005, for the first time, the global pharmaceutical industry started shrinking manufacturing capacity. 2007, for the first time, they started reducing the feet on the street, so headcount essentially. And then the last blow was in 2011 when they started cutting back on R&D. That's the lifeblood of the pharma industry. So you can see the metrics are all in place for quite a substantial change in this industry as we go forward. So as I said, some have gone the consolidation route. Some have taken geography bets like GSK. The other geography bets which people have taken are companies like Amgen or BMS, who have said that we will focus only on American and European markets or Japan, and we will focus only on biotech products and produce high-value differentiated products. Hopefully, we will be able to maintain the pricing. We will not focus on emerging markets. That's a bet somebody takes. GSK has said we will diversify. So one is geography, second is consumer. So we have consumer business, and they're not sold out the consumer business. So in the 90s, if you're focused on the pharmaceutical industry as a global pharma company, you got a higher PE multiple than somebody who was diversified. Today it's the other way around. You got a higher multiple if you are diversified versus if you are focused. J&J, long ago they decided to diversify. So they got into medical devices, they already were in consumer, they got into diagnostics, which they just sold. So those are the other kinds of bets which companies are taking. And the jury is still out. We'll have to wait and see the winners and the losers. Some have bought biotech. So Roche went and bought Genentech, and that has worked extremely well for them. They bought it in 2001. Sanofi just bought Genzyme. Again, it's a biotech company. We'll have to wait to see how that works. So it's a very challenging uncertain world for the global pharma industry. You know, people talk about the VUCA world. You know what's VUCA world? No? Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. That's how they define the business environment today. So I think that that's even more pronounced in the pharmaceutical industry today, global pharma. So these are some of the other things they've done. I spoke to you about outsourcing of parts of R&D to bring down cost of bringing a drug to market. But they're also running into political issues and challenges from their home countries. Consolidation. So companies that have been bought out, Cherry Plough, Wyeth, big companies. Expertise in specific areas. So we are focused on respiratory, for example. And then the other challenge they have is compliance. All of us. So what was acceptable as a practice in marketing in, say, the decade of the 90s can actually attract billions of dollars of funds. So that's how dramatically the landscape has shifted. Every pharma company has paid fines in the US for some violation or the other. J&J, GSK, Pfizer, everyone. So again, you have to deal with this. So your traditional functional expertise doesn't work anymore, and you have to find, and we spoke about this, you know, Andrew has said that you've got to change the way we're going to approach doctors. And that this is going to apply to most companies. So if this is not enough, you've got some more challenges here. And then they had challenges on manufacturing. What the Indian companies are facing today from the US FDA, what you read in the press, the global companies faced in the early part of the decade, 2000. They all paid fines. So it's not as if the Indian companies are being targeted. So that's a snapshot of the challenges which global pharma faces. Many of them are focusing on emerging markets. That should tell you why there was a gold rush in India from 2007. And pharma is topical to me, it's not topical to you, but Daiichi bought Ranbaxy at some very fancy prices. You know, the share price of Daiichi, Ranbaxy today is what?